No conditions, no ifs, ands, or buts. It just says we are funding TSA. If Republicans want to see our TSA workers get paid, they should not object.
Say, let's get this entire department funded. Let's not leave here today and walk by a TSA agent knowing that we are the reason they're not getting paid. Think about those Border Patrol agents that are welcoming visitors from all over the world to Las Vegas. Think about those ICE agents that are arresting criminal aliens. Imagine those TSA agents, the Coast Guard, FEMA, cybersecurity. You have a lot of those resources in your state. Can I please ask you for some level of humanity?
What you're about to see is a tense exchange on the Senate floor over government funding and whether certain security agencies should be funded immediately. Lawmakers from both parties argue over how to handle funding for the Department of Homeland Security during a shutdown standoff. At the center of the debate are TSA workers and other federal employees who could miss paychecks. Watch closely as the discussion quickly turns into a sharp political clash.
Thank you, Mr. President. In a few moments, my friend and colleague, the senator from Nevada, will offer a unanimous consent request that is very simple. It funds TSA. No conditions, no ifs, ands, or buts. It just says we are funding TSA. If Republicans want to see our TSA workers get paid, they should not object. It's very simple. We know we need to straighten this out. Many people have different formulas, but plain and simple. You want to fund TSA with no conditions, no preconditions, just yes or no, no ands, ifs, or buts. Do not block the resolution. If Republicans block this resolution, we'll know they don't want to fund TSA because this is the simplest, quickest, easiest way to do it. Our colleagues on the other side said, oh, no, we don't want to fund it unless we have a compromise or we have a deal on other parts of ICE and CPB. That is holding the TSA agents and the American people hostage. We're not holding any hostages. We're just saying we need to fund TSA. We need to fund it now. No ands, ifs, or buts. No questions asked. No preconditions. The American people will see. The Rosen proposal is simple. If Republicans block it, they're standing in the way of funding TSA now. I yield to my colleague. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The Majority Whip is recognized.
Mr. President, I just hear the minority leader come to the floor of the United States and say what the Democrats want to do is peel apart the Department of Homeland Security, a department that was set up in this nation after the attacks of 9/11, the attacks that struck the home city of the minority leader, took down the Twin Towers. This Department of Homeland Security was set up specifically to protect our nation. Multiple components put together to protect America, the American people. And what are the Democrats doing today? They're coming to the floor to peel it apart and say, oh, no, we're not interested in protecting the border. Oh, no, we're not interested in making sure illegal immigrant criminals are taken out of the country. No, that's not what they're doing. They're coming and saying, we're going to just take this part or that part.
And this is where the exchange begins to shift. What started as a debate over quickly funding TSA turns into a broader argument about the entire Department of Homeland Security. One side argues that piecemeal funding weakens national security, while the other says immediate pay for federal workers should come first. The disagreement highlights how a single funding bill can quickly expand into a much larger political standoff.
This is a comprehensive plan, the Department of Homeland Security, to protect our nation. That's what we're seeing here today. That's why they're here. Our cybersecurity is under attack. Our people are under attack. Our nation is under attack. And we need to defend ourselves, and we need a full Department of Homeland Security. Not what we're going to see in the next hour is one can, well, no, let's fund this little part. No, let's fund this little part. No, let's fund this little part. As they don't want to fund the Department of Homeland Security. They say, well, hey, the Department of Homeland Security is there to guard our coast. We have the Coast Guard in there. We have FEMA for emergency management of federal problems. We have our cybersecurity, where today 1/3 of those people are working, not getting paid, and 2/3 today, right this very moment, are furloughed. And that seems to be fine with the Democrats. They don't seem to care because they are so committed to the illegal immigrants who are criminals and in this country, let in by Joe Biden and them. Over 10 million flooded into the country during the last 4 years. And they are so beholden and detached to the far left component of this nation that they don't care about everybody else. We've had terrorist attacks right here on the homeland. 2 in the last 2 weeks. And so we're going to stand here and we're going to listen to this little unanimous consent agreement and that one at the time when our homeland is under attack. All warning lights are flashing red, and they want to peel apart, piece by piece, the Department of Homeland Security, the comprehensive department of our government, to protect the American people because they want to stand with illegal immigrant criminals. Thank you, Mr. President.
It's the way to go. Senator from Ohio is recognized.
You know, I've only had the honor, and I call it an honor, honestly, an honor to serve as a United States Senator for 14 months. Every day when I drive down Pennsylvania, make a left on Constitution, and see the sunrise over the Capitol, I genuinely feel the weight of how important this office is. And I actually have incredible admiration, not for my forefathers. My forefathers came from South America. But for the forefathers of the people who built this country, to think of the wisdom of what our founders envisioned. Our founders created an institution that is genuinely, it gives me chills to think about the genius of what they did. They created a House of Representatives where every 2 years there's an election, there's a lot of friction that goes on, and a simple majority passes a bill. And yet they wanted the Senate to be more deliberative. They wanted to force us, Mr. President. You know, and you personally know how hard it is. They wanted to force us to have strong conversations with the opposing party to get to a resolution. They really did. They didn't want it to just be simple majority rule. They wanted to make it really difficult. But what I've experienced over the last 14 months, I got to tell you, is decently disappointing. Because for me, what I think should unite us is what do the American people really want from us? What is it that they want their leaders to do? We've now seen it 3 times in a row this year where my Democrat colleagues have shut the government down. Now, what does that mean? You hear a lot of speeches. What it means is that if you're a government employee, tomorrow's Friday and it's payday, you're not getting a check. Imagine what that feels like. You're a dad. Imagine what that feels like to have to explain to your kids why you went to work. You did your job. You didn't do anything wrong. And you don't have the money that you need to pay your basic bills. And yet us here in the United States Senate, our paychecks are uninterrupted. We get paid to do our job a lot more, magnitude more money than average Americans make. We'll leave here today and travel to far-off places. And yet we'll walk by TSA agents that aren't getting paid. We expect Border Patrol to do their job. We expect Customs to do their job. We expect FEMA to do their job. I have a big Coast Guard presence in Ohio. We need them to do their job. And yet none of them are getting paid. They did nothing wrong. There wasn't a single employee of the Department of Homeland Security who is affected by this, that they personally are the reason this department is funded. So I truly, from the bottom of my heart, ask my Democrat colleagues, with all absolutely desire to get a result, is let's spend 2 weeks. And we can start today, by the way. There's no reason for us to go home. I'm willing to start today, like we start right now. And we sit down together, we look at the appropriations bill for the entire Department of Homeland Security, and in good faith, not with political theater, not to score political points, not to be cool on social media, but actually sit in a room and say, let's get this entire department funded. Let's not leave here today and walk by a TSA agent knowing that we are the reason they're not getting paid. That's unacceptable. Let's sit down together. Over 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, we can do that for 14 days. I'm willing to stay in Washington, D.C. for 14 days and hash out an agreement. We can do it. That's what our voters want. That's why they elected us. They don't want us to be shirts and skins on everything. So, Mr. President, I ask make a very simple motion. I think most Americans would appreciate. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to immediate consideration of calendar number 156, H.R. 4553. I further ask that the substitute amendment number 4353 be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended to be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table. What that means is that we can fund the employees of the Department of Homeland Security now while we spend 2 weeks working together to get a resolution.
Is there an objection to the motion?
Mr. President,
Senator from Nevada is recognized.
I object. We've had more than 2 weeks. I'm sorry.
Questions heard.
Do I need to say something different?
Yep, no, I understand. Look, I understand the political pressures. I really do. We'll see that sometimes appealing to a certain voter bloc is maybe what makes us popular. But I want to read you a quote from the Democrat whip, Deputy Democrat whip, a senior appropriator, by the way, who said, "We are very serene with what's going on." We're very serene with what's going on. You're serene that tonight, a dad, a mom is going to come home and say, "Can't do that. Can't pay for your dentist recital. Can't pay for your spring break ticket because just didn't get a paycheck." I want you to explain to a 12-year-old child why you're not getting paid. They're going to talk about Senate procedure. They're going to talk about the appropriations process. Look, this is just another effort to distract us from what's going on here. So again, I just urge my Democrat colleague to consider, as you think about your own state. Now, by the way, I genuinely believe you deeply care about your state. I hear you talk about it, and it's absolutely sincere. You deeply care about your state. Think about those Border Patrol agents that are welcoming visitors from all over the world to Las Vegas. Think about those ICE agents that are arresting criminal aliens, like the one that was just recently arrested. That was a pretty bad guy. Imagine those TSA agents, the Coast Guard, FEMA, cybersecurity. You have a lot of those resources in your state. Can I please ask you for some level of humanity to get this done? Reconsider your objection, and let's fund the Department of Homeland Security TSA agents for 2 weeks. Please, I ask you to do that.
Moments like this show how intense government funding debates can become inside the Senate. What begins as a procedural vote can quickly turn into a broader argument about national security, immigration policy, and the impact on federal workers. At the heart of the exchange is a simple question about how Congress should handle funding during a shutdown. What do you think about this debate? Should agencies be funded individually during a standoff, or should lawmakers only pass a full funding agreement? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.